In this video today, we're going to talk about fears, specifically fears in your business, what they are, what they mean, and how to actually take steps to overcome them. There are a lot of irrational fears that you might have in your business. I've experienced them myself, so I'm going to talk to you a little bit about those. Number one, like posting, just getting out there and posting and even sharing an opinion can be scary. Selling can be very scary. Launching a new product that you don't know how people are going to respond to once it gets out there can be really scary. Even niching down, where it's like I've wrestled personally with something where I'm afraid to get too specific, and because I don't want to count people out of my product. I feel like I'd be losing money, right? But when you're in the starting stages, that doesn't really matter. You want to start super specific. You want to start niche down and then go broader later, and it will actually be better for you. So there are a lot of irrational fears that come up when we work on a business, especially when you're starting out. If you don't have a mentor or somebody to guide you through these fears, they can be very difficult to even see. It's almost like if you're a fish, what's the one thing that you don't know exists? Like water, because you live in it. You don't know it exists because you're in it. It's around you. So it's the same thing. If you've been living with a fear your whole life and it's become part of you, then it's a lot like the water for a fish where you may not even know that you are in it. So let's talk a little bit about this. Why do they feel scarier than they logically should? Like, why do we feel so afraid to post or just share an opinion or niche down or sell? Well, the fact is, you're afraid of one thing, and that's rejection. You're afraid of rejection. You're afraid of being alone. You're afraid of being cast out. You're afraid of criticism. You're essentially afraid of what the reaction is, whether people are going to accept it or not. Back thousands of years ago, it mattered a lot whether we were accepted by the people that were in our immediate area. If you were not accepted into your tribe of hunter gatherers, you would often just be left to fend for yourself until you died. And so, fear of being rejected by a group is synonymous for us with fear of death. So, it's kind of like the biggest fear you can have. However, in today's society, that doesn't serve us that well, because if you get kicked out of a group, you can just go to another group. There's no having to wander the savannah by yourself in your underwear because you got kicked out of your group. So times are different now. So how do these things show up? How do they show up on your body? You'll feel worry, anxiety, depression, maybe anger. You'll feel lots of negative emotions. Maybe you'll just be scrolling your phone and you'll see some political news or something like that, and it'll trigger worry inside your mind. Well, what's going to happen now is you might find yourself doing a bunch of useless stuff around the house. You might find yourself wanting to take a nap, wanting to check out, wanting to do anything but get to work on your business, do anything but execute your ideas and go face fears, because you kind of probably feel like crawling into a hole. That's one of the reactions you might feel. Okay, that was pretty good. Maybe I could share a story here. Now, you would not be alone in this. I'll even share something personal that I've been wrestling with even recently, where there's been a lot of panicky political news out there. I myself, I don't know if I should share that. Maybe I should. Yeah, it's okay. I'll even share a little story about myself where, hmm, I'll even share a vulnerable story with my I'll even share a vulnerable story about myself, because this is something that's been happening more recently. As you might know, there's a lot of political news out there to incite panic, to scare people, a lot of it being around immigration. My wife is actually working on her process right now. We're doing it the lawful way. However, with all of the media and headlines and things going around, it's really scary to see some of the stuff that's going on. And so I'll see this stuff online because I'm staying up to date with it and I get in my head about it. It makes me not want to go post online. It makes me not want to go do my selling. It makes me not want to really do any work throughout the day at all, to be honest. But I still go do it. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how to approach it that way. But you're not alone, right? And so a lot of us feel these fears, whether it's rational or irrational. Sometimes they're not that rational, but sometimes they are. And either way, they can deeply inhibit the work that you're doing in your business. So, what does this fear usually mean in this context? Hmm. So, what do these fears usually mean? Well, typically they mean that you are perceiving that you are going to have more drawbacks than benefits in the future. Essentially, in simpler terms, you're perceiving that more bad stuff is going to happen than good stuff. And because of that perception of possibility, you're afraid. You don't want more bad stuff to happen than good stuff. That's pretty logical, right? So you're going to do whatever you can to avoid that bad stuff from happening, right? Sometimes we don't necessarily do whatever we can to avoid the bad stuff from happening. We just try to run away from it, which doesn't prevent it from happening. It just prevents it from happening to us, right? Maybe. And even so, if you run away from it, you're still not getting over that fear. So that fear is still going to run you in some way. Even if you run away from the danger, you are still going to be afraid of that thing. So, what does this mean for you? It means that in your business, especially, fear is a place in your life where you can grow. If you are afraid of taking some kind of action, like talking to somebody or posting or sharing an opinion, do it. That's a place that you can grow. It's also there's work that you can do to balance your emotions in these situations. If you are perceiving more drawbacks than benefits in the future because something's going to happen or something did happen, collapse it. That's not helpful at all. Also, you can do work to actually balance your emotions in a lot of these situations. That's fuck it. Also, there's work that you can do to balance a lot of your emotions in these situations. Like I said, if you're afraid of something, you're perceiving more future drawbacks than benefits. Fuck, dude. Also, there's more work. Also, there's work that you can do to balance your emotions in these situations because like I said, you're actually perceiving more drawbacks than benefits in the future. That's why you're afraid of it. You don't want that bad stuff to happen, right? So what you can do is you can actually balance the equation by searching for more benefits because right now it's lopsided. The reason that you're afraid is because you have a lopsided charge on it. You're polarized to one side, so you can balance that by thinking of more benefits and bringing them to more of a level playing stage. So that's what I would recommend you do about that. No, it's not. I'm going to cut that out. Don't fucking recommend shit yet. We're not at that part yet. So fear can actually So fear can actually be revealing the next step to you. It could actually be a sign that you need to move forward on something rather than retreat or hide or get frustrated. And in business, usually it is. Usually that's something that you're going to go have to do anyway because you're afraid of it. And just go fuck yourself because you can't think of anything else to say, bro. So fear is usually a sign to move forward. Now, how are people responding right now to fear? Here's how you can sort of recognize it. The four responses to fear are fight, fawn, freeze, or flight. You've probably heard fight and flight, right? Why can't I just keep going? Why can't I do it? So, how are people responding to this fear right now? This is a way that you can actually detect if that's going on because you can notice, hey, that's been my behavior. There's actually four responses that you can have to fear, and they're the survival responses. You've heard of fight and flight, but there's two others, fawn and freeze. Fight and flight, pretty self explanatory. If you're fighting it, you're probably resisting the emotion. You're probably getting frustrated. You're probably getting in your head and fighting with yourself about it. That's kind of the fight response. If you are flighting or running away, in other words, then you are basically just avoiding. You might take a nap. You might literally just do nothing, scroll your phone, do anything but the work that you need to do in your business. So that's fight and flight. Fawning would be like appeasing, which I don't know if that would totally work in this scenario. I think that might apply if you are trying to do busy work where you're trying to do kind of like other stuff. It's kind of productive and you can sort of appease yourself by convincing yourself that you're doing stuff that's productive, but it's not really productive. And then there's freeze, which basically means you do nothing, you freeze. Um, it's going to look remarkably like flight where you're just running away, but essentially you just stay in a paralyzed state. Sometimes people will just plan forever and they'll just never actually take action on executing the plans. And some people will just not work at all. So the patterns I'll typically see are like frustration, avoiding big decisions, over planning. Like I mentioned, you'll actually just get into planning mode forever and ever and ever and never actually execute the plans. And then you might feel some perfectionism along the way of that, where you're literally just trying to make it perfect and you keep working and working and working on it. And then you just start changing stuff and it's not even getting better at that point. And then there's procrastination, where you just put it off and you find really clever excuses to never get to work. The fact is that none of these responses actually move you into the actions that you need to take to move forward. These responses are sabotaging your momentum because none of them actually get you into the actions you need to take to move forward. They're all different forms of delay. And anybody that you talk to, they're going to have their own creative form of delay. They sound a lot like excuses. I know you've heard them before when you've invited people places or you've tried to make things happen and people have come up with reasons why they can't do it. Sometimes it's complete BS, right? But everybody has their own creative forms of avoidance. And I'm no different. You're no different. You do the same thing. If you search for places in your life, you're doing the exact same thing they are, just like me. So let's move into. So let's talk about how can you start using this fear as a driver or as fuel to actually move forward rather than getting stuck in these survival responses. So that's actually it, right? Let the fear become a fuel rather than a trigger of survival. Because right now, what you're doing, same thing that I've been doing, is we're coming up against fear and then we're going, you know what? I'm going to respond this way because it feels safe and that's what I've always done. That's the water that you're in. You remember the fish? That's the water that you're in. Right now, whatever your response is to fear, think about it for a second. Whatever your response is to fear, that's the water. So become aware of the water. Now that you know when fear comes up and you know what response you're having, that's the water that you're in. So you become aware of that. And then now that you're aware, you can actually choose other responses. You're not stuck doing the same thing over and over your whole life. That's the definition of insanity. Think about what you are actually doing in response and choose a different response. And I'll go over, what you can actually choose. The response that I would have you choose is action. Action is actually safer. Despite what you might feel, freezing, running away, getting frustrated, that might feel safe right now because you get to avoid the challenge, or you get to avoid being judged, or you get to get away from something in the moment. But I'm guessing at this point in your life, it sort of caught up to you a little bit. There's some of that that's coming back to get you. And you think sometimes, maybe if I had just done that thing, I wouldn't be in the situation I am now. Am I right? So begin seeking discomfort. Begin seeking discomfort. Action is safer than running away. Action is safer than your survival responses. So next time you feel fear, I challenge you to begin taking small actions, even if you're scared crapless of doing it. Start taking small actions towards your goals as a response to your fear instead of whatever survival responses you've been doing. And if fear has been keeping you stuck in your business, if you felt paralyzed, um, and if fear has been keeping you stuck in your business, if you felt paralyzed, frustrated, frozen, that's the same thing. And if fear has been keeping you stuck in your business, if you felt paralyzed, frustrated, angry, that's not it either. And if fear has been keeping you stuck in your business, if you felt paralyzed, frustrated, worried, my free course Spark is designed to help you. Fuck. And if fear has been keeping you stuck in your business, if you felt paralyzed, frustrated, worried, my free course Spark is designed to help you retrain your brain to see that fear as a compass rather than a warning sign. You will learn how to develop habits of acting powerfully in response to fear, which is where you'll learn how to enact habits where you act powerfully in response to fear rather than your survival responses. Mm. You'll learn how to create habits where you act powerfully in response to fear rather than your survival responses, which is where the real growth is going to happen. So tap the button below this video and enroll in the first spot. So go ahead and tap the button down below this video and enroll in the first module of Spark for free.